ツマンおじ今日のニュースを読みます。Fortune. We are now firmly back in a good is bad, bad is good regime. Weak job data may lead to more rate cuts and boost stocks, Morgan Stanley economist said. Ahead of highly anticipated November job data to be released this week, even lackluster numbers may be greeted with relief by Wall Street. A moderate cooling labor market could increase the likelihood of more rate cuts by the Federal Reserve, a tantalizing prospect for many investors eyeing future earning growth, fueling bullish behavior in the stock market, according to a Morgan Stanley analysis. We are not firmly back in a good is bad, bad is good regime. Michael Wilson, a chief U.S. equity strategist and chief investment officer for Morgan Stanley, wrote in a note to investors on Monday. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is divisive cut last week, the Fed's third cut in as many meetings, was based on the consistent data showing the softening job market, including unemployment rising 3 months in a row through the September, and the private sector shedding 32,000 jobs last month, per ADP's November report. According to Powell, the quarter-point cut was defensive and a way to prevent the labor market from tumbling, adding that while inflation sits at about 2.8%, which is higher than the Fed preferred 2%. He said he expected inflation to peak early next year, barring no additional tariff. He added that monthly job report may have been overcounted by about 60,000 as a result of data collection errors, and that payroll gains may actually be stagnant or even negative. I think the world where job creation is negative, we need to watch that very carefully, Powell said at a press conference directly following the announcement of the rate cut. Wilson suggested that Powell's emphasis on the job data, as well as the emphasis on tariff-focused inflation, makes the labor market a crucial factor in the monetary policy going into 2026. As a result of government shutdown, the Labor Department job market report will be released on Tuesday, which will contain data from both October and November, and is expected to show the modest 50,000 payroll gain in November, with the unemployment rate ticking up from the 4.4% to about 4.5%, consistent with the trend of labor market that is slowing but not suddenly bottoming out. Rolling recovery versus plain bad news. The Morgan Stanley strategist has previously argued that weak payroll numbers are actually a sign of a rolling recovery, with the economy early stage of upswing slowly making its way through each sector. That followed 3 years of rolling recession that Wilson said had kept the economy weaker than what employment and GDP figures suggest. Wilson's eye, because job data is a lagging metric. The trough of the labor cycle was actually back in the spring, coincide with the mass Dutch firing and the Liberation Day tariff. For more accurate representation of the health of the economy, Wilson argued to look instead at the market. The S&P 500, for example, is up nearly 13% over the past 6 months. However, with Powell basing his policy decision on data such as job, Wilson noticed the Fed will still see more room to cut, even as Morgan Stanley sees the labor market that is not in jeopardy. In real time, data has been weak enough to justify cutting more, Wilson told CNBC last week prior to the Fed meeting. But when they actually look at the revisions now, it's very clear that we had a significant labor cycle and we will come out of it, which is very good. But just as economists weren't in a consensus for the Federal Open Market Committee's most recent rate cut, the possibility of more meager job number is not universally favored. Claudia Sham, a chief economist at the New Century Advice and a former Fed economist, agreed the job data is a lagging economic indicator, but warned it could indicate a recession is on the way, not that we are already in the clear. What was particularly concerning to her was the lagging labor data could bear the worst job news, as the layoffs have yet to surge following shrinking job opening. She told Fortune ahead of Fed decision last week that additional rate cut would not be welcome news, but rather a sign the Fed had acted too late in trying to correct the better labor market. If the Powell Fed ends up doing a lot more cuts, then we probably don't have a good economy, she said. Be careful what we wish for. 以上です。